Welcome to Let's Talk Kenmore, a lighthearted podcast aimed at connecting our listeners to their local government and demystifying the role of government in the city of Kenmore. I'm your host, Amber Clifton. In this episode, I sit down with Principal Planner Todd Hall. Todd provides an overview of the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan and lets us know what the community can do to get involved. Please enjoy this episode of Let's Talk Kenmore. Hi, welcome to Let's Talk Kenmore. I am here today with our Principal Planner in Community Development, Todd Hall, and Todd is going to give us an overview and education on the current city PROS plan. Hi, Todd. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Amber. Thank you very much.
Hi. So the PROS plan stands for Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Can you kind of give us a rundown of what the PROS plan is?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the PROS plan is a document that provides a framework for the future development of the parks and rec facilities and programs that we offer in the city of Kenmore. And that's looked over the next 20 years. The plan identifies and categorizes existing conditions, evaluates the context of the city of Kenmore and the community it serves, and then analyzes the demand and need for parks and rec facilities. And then it also recommends improvements for our park systems to meet the future needs of the community. So we look at both short and long-term improvements, as well as the potential funding sources and implementation of the proposed improvements over that time. So to help us accomplish this, we've acquired the services of a consulting group, Tom Beckwith of Beckwith Consulting Group. They're a multidisciplinary planning firm who's got over 4 decades of experience with updating parks plans, comprehensive plans, sub-area plans, visioning plans, all kinds of different things that are related to city business. And he's been doing that for a really long time. So we're really excited to have him on board and helping Debbie Bent, the community development director, and myself on this important project. In addition to hearing from the community about their needs, wants and desires of Parks and Rec, another key reason we're updating this plan is to ensure that the city remains eligible for grant funding from the Washington State Recreation Conservation Office, or also known as RCO. Mm-hmm. So the RCO requires the city to update our PROS plan every 6 years, and our deadline to do that is this upcoming February of 2026. So what they look at is a minimum of 6 different elements in the PROS plan. That's including some goals and objectives, the existing system inventory that we have, making sure that we have a public involvement process, demand and needs analysis. So this is looking at what the public uses and what the needs are for the community. Capital facilities program, that's basically looking at the funding, and then of course the adoption itself through council. And then once council adopts the plan and RCO certifies, then we're essentially eligible for another 6 years of grant funding.
Gotcha. So the last PROS plan then was done in 2020. What were the things in that plan, and was there anything in there that has since been put into action?
Yeah. So there were several outcomes of the 2020 plan. And as is the case of the upcoming update, there was an evaluation of recreational trends, community interests at the time, the benchmarks, evaluation of, population and demographics, which is always changing over, several years, recreational programming, and then looking at our participation rates in various programs. There's a couple of surveys that were done, including a statistically valid survey, which confirmed overall public sentiment on a variety of parks and rec issues, including level of interest, needs assessment, importance of potential projects. And at that time, the top needs were nature trails, indoor swimming and aquatic center, lots of walking and biking paths, having an off-leash dog park, and then a variety of indoor fitness opportunities. So a list of short, mid, and long-term projects were identified and then costed out.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So are we this new plan, is this just assessing if those are still the needs of the community?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, we're just kind of basically looking at, if anything's changed over that time period, and then what new things are going to be, looked at in the near or long-term future.
And so the online survey that's happening right now, that's one of the avenues that you're kind of taking the temperature of the community. So what do you do with that data once it's collected?
Yeah, so really the survey is about understanding the community's needs and priorities. So what it does is it really helps us gather insights on how the Kenmore community uses the park system currently, and then what the needs are, both short term and long term, and what the preferences are for future parks and rec programs and facilities. So what we do in a survey is we look at what's called a data analysis, and we collect that survey responses and we analyze this to identify some common themes, priorities, and any concerns that the residents might have about our rec programs. So we have a statistically valid survey that's going to be included. We have an informal survey up on our website right now, a general survey or overview. And we also have a statistically valid survey that's going to be given later this summer that's going to look more closely at community insights and then how are we going to be able to fund various programs. We'll take this feedback, and that's going to be crucial for shaping out the future management and development of our parks, properties, and recreational programs within this 6 to 20 year time frame in Kenmore. And then we'll look at that data to kind of help support our master planning process, looking at capital investment decisions that staff would then make recommendations, and then the council would ultimately make those decisions. And then lastly, the survey data would help us identify areas of improvement and prioritizing, and then just really looking at what facilities needs upgrades and programming. We have a lot of existing facilities out there that, over time are going to need maintenance.
Right.
And so it's not just looking at new things that we need, but also how do we maintain those facilities to make sure they stand the test of time.
Right. Do you know how long that survey that's up now will be available for people to participate in?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically up through the project. We've been getting a pretty good return from our residents and folks that are interested in taking the survey. So we don't have any specific timeline on when it's going to be taken out. With that said, we'll have a survey that's going to be sent, the statistically valid one, to our homeowners or anybody that lives in Kenmore with a mailing address. And I would imagine at that point, the online one will probably drop off, in terms of level of importance or participation in that, just because they'll be focused on the new one that's coming in the mail.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good to know. I'll keep my eye out for that.
Yeah.
So what are the current recreation programs in the city, and do we have any at all?
Yeah. So in Kenmore, we have 13 city-operated and maintained parks and open space and recreation type facilities, and that's over about 146 to 150 acres. And we've got a variety of different types of parks. So we've got what's called pocket parks, or these neighborhood parks. Oh. And these are just small little spaces, and they might have a small sitting area, a few benches or tables. And then, of course, many of them have small playgrounds that kids can use. So it's basically targeted for those that are within the immediate vicinity within walking distance.
I had no idea that they were called pocket parks.
Yeah.
I didn't know. What would be an example of a pocket park in Kenmore?
Well, one would be like Linwood Park, or the one, I forget the name of the one up on the top of the hill up in the Up Lake neighborhood.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's one up there. So there's ones scattered around town that are just really more smaller one. There's only a few little acres, mm-hmm. and they really serve the immediate community. Gotcha. So it's for folks, young families and whatnot can walk there easily and use those parks.
Okay.
Then we've also got some larger parks such as Rhododendron Park, or waterfront parks such as Log Boom. And then we've also have the newly open, or at least within the last few years, the Tlaquettes Park. Mm-hmm. I know I'm not saying that correctly because that's a difficult one to say.
It is. I think you're doing pretty good though. That park is beautiful.
Yeah, so that's really an amazing new gem for our community. There's water access such as kayaking, canoeing, rafting, and paddleboarding. I know that a lot of our user groups in the area use that. So there's clubs that go to Tlaquettes Park. And then, of course, Log Boom's just been a really long time popular park for kids to go out, either on paddle boards or just swim and go out on the dock. So that one's always really, really popular in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
We've also got a variety of hardscape type parks. This would be like the Jack Crawford Skate Park, which is right next to the City Hall. And then we also have the Town Square, which in the summertime, we have a very popular water feature, which folks of all ages, especially young kids, they can come out on a hot day and just run around in the fountain there.
Right.
And it's just a really nice way to cool off. And so that's a popular place that we've got. In addition to the other parks and rec facilities that we have, we are basically what's called a service type community. And so we have service providers that offer our recreation programs within the city limits. There's a variety of those folks that provide recreation programs. And then we also have a couple other facilities that aren't city owned or operated parks, but they basically are within our jurisdictions or bisect them. That one being the Burt Gilman Trail,
Mm-hmm.
which is maintained by King County. We also have the Tolt Pipeline Trail, which is a gravel trail that goes east-west, just kind of north of the City Hall. And then, of course, I think everybody knows about St. Edward State Park, which is just an amazing regional gem, just not for the community itself, but just the entire east side and Puget Sound. And it's just a very peaceful setting where folks can come in and just really enjoy the trails and the tranquility. And then there's also access down to the Lake Washington waterfront.
Yeah, agreed. That park is beautiful. That I spent most of my childhood there. And it's also where we host our summer concerts.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So when you were talking earlier about some of the funding needing for maintenance, that would include things like maybe like the boat launch or, things like that we want to be able to continue to offer the community. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So things that we have that are in existence in our parks, we need to look at how we maintain those over time. And so one thing that we do as part of this pros plan update is looking at, capital facilities plan and investments and how to make that work over, a short and long term, just for sustainability purposes.
Right. Community engagement. That's a really big, important part of this whole thing. So you spoke about the survey. What other kinds of things can the community do to participate and get involved in all of this?
Sure. So engagement process, like I said, has been ongoing since the beginning of the project, which started in earnest a couple of months ago, and then we'll continue that through adoption. There's a variety of ways for the community to get involved, most notably through the online surveys, which you mentioned. We've got a variety of special events that are coming up. And then, of course, attending or listening in on Planning Commission and eventually later in the year at City Council meetings. We've had that active online survey that's been posted on Speak Up Kenmore webpage. That can be found on the city's webpage under Parks and Rec. We've also got a community meeting coming up actually next Tuesday. I know the recording of this is on July 17th, but next Tuesday, the 22nd, in the City Council chambers, Tom Beckwith and staff will be leading a discussion and will provide a brief presentation, then just kind of have an open Q&A session. This is going to also be available online, so you don't have to attend in person. You can also participate virtually. And then I also plan to be out at a couple of Wednesdays farmers market. I was, of course, just out at one yesterday where it was super warm. We didn't have a whole lot of folks stop by yesterday, and that's understandable since this was pretty hot out.
Yeah.
But I plan to be out there later this summer and, just talking with folks. I have a few poster boards with some maps and handouts if anybody's interested. And we'll be talking to folks about that. And then we also plan to just do some additional outreach on our website and talk, as more things get developed as part of the plan, we'll have that posted on our website. And that's going to talk more about, what's being developed in terms of our parks and facility proposals, what the financing might look like, impact fees that it gets charged to developers. So basically, looking at the holistic plan for that next 6 to 20 years.
What sort of, when you do the open house, what sort of feedback are you looking for?
So as I mentioned earlier, one of the main objectives for gathering feedback from our community and user groups is to kind of look at the current state of the park and recreational offerings. So this is done by identifying community needs and priorities. So for instance, what types of parks and facilities and programs do residents want and need? Are there gaps in our existing services or facilities that we have to address? What are the priorities for new development or improvements to our existing facilities? We'll want to also look at specific requests from folks that we often hear about, which is improving accessibility to our parks or enhancing additional waterfront access to our lake or our rivers, promoting more opportunities for active lifestyles through either new programming or facilities. And then one that we hear of a lot, which is of no surprise to many, is really preserving Kenmore's natural environment. We're really fortunate to have such a great, not only park system that provides active recreation, but we have a lot of treed and rivers and creeks and streams and whatnot that are very valuable to our community. And so we want to make sure that we're looking at ways to help preserve those open spaces, wetlands, and those areas that folks want to retain.
Right.
And then another item for feedback, is looking at parks and rec programs, kind of what are the strengths and weaknesses of our current park system and recreation offerings? How do our facilities really meet the demands and the needs for our community? Is there barriers that there are for access and participation? So those are the many different things that we want to hear about from our community, throughout this process. And so it's important that people are engaged and let their voices be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great opportunity for people to kind of have their say in improvements or modifications that they'd like to see happen. Yeah. So other than yourself and the contractor that you spoke of, who is involved in this whole plan?
No, that's a good question. So, as you can imagine, there's a lot of groups and individuals who are going to be really interested and involved in an update of this nature. So it's not just Kenmore. We've got a lot of folks that are outside the city that use our parks and facilities. So we've got what's called stakeholders or user groups. And so that might include other adjacent cities or state agencies such as the state parks and the Fish and Wildlife Department. We've got the North Shore School District that is a big stakeholder because they have a lot of properties, school grounds that folks use, whether it's fields or tennis courts or playgrounds. Local arts and culture groups, that's one that I haven't mentioned before, and many folks may not know unless they're active in them, is kind of, like say the Arts of Kenmore, the Kenmore Heritage Society. We've got a couple of repertory theater groups that use facilities. And of course, the Kenmore Library, which is just down the street from our city hall. We don't want to forget about our seniors within Kenmore. So we have the Kenmore Senior Center that needs to provide feedback, and they're involved. And so they have a variety of classes, services, and special events and support groups that service, their age group. And then, of course, we've got a whole ton of sports leagues that use our facilities within Kenmore. And that could be such as the North Shore Youth Soccer, the North Lake Little League Baseball. And then there's also a variety of different service providers. So we've got like the YMCA holds camps, there's Skyhawks. Skate Like a Girl is a program that's really great that uses the Jack Crawford skate park next door. And then the Kenmore Waterfront Activity Center, which I mentioned, we got Tlaquettes Park, but we also have a facility that's on the opposite side of the river. And that's another opportunity to gain access to the waterfront. And then, like I mentioned earlier, because Kenmore is very environmentally conscious, we've also got a variety of environmental stewardship groups. So that could be the Snow King Watershed Council that does a whole lot of habitat restoration and cleanup along our creeks and waterways, and anything that does to help in that nature. So it's really anybody that's got a vested interest in parks, trails, open spaces. There's just so many facets of parks and
Yeah.
recreation that touches a lot of people.
Wow. I hadn't actually thought about all of those stakeholders, but you're right. It's a lot. So what is going to be the work that's sort of included in updating this pros plan?
Yeah, so in addition to updating the pros plan itself, we're also required to update our parks, rec, and open space element of the comp plan. So the comprehensive plan basically is our 20-year, long-term plan for city, and we just completed our what's called the periodic update of Kenmore comprehensive plan just last year in 2024. And because we knew that we were going to be doing the pros plan update in 2025, we held off on updating the parks, rec, and open space element of the comp plan. So that's in addition to the pros plan. So they're similar in nature, but the pros element really talks about objectives, goals, policies that are related to the overall comp plan of the city. The document is part of the State Growth Management Act, so that's something that we're required to do as part of our state requirements. And then it also provides a vision for the community, and it helps guide the planning and acquisition and development of parks, similar to what the pros plan does. It's just an additional item. And then also we'll include work on updating the capital facilities plan. And this is basically going to look at, funding, lists of projects, over the next 6 years and then beyond that. And then one other thing is completing what's called an environmental review, or otherwise known as SEPA.
Okay.
And so we have to do a SEPA checklist, and that basically looks at if there's going to be any major environmental impacts when we update the plans. Generally speaking, when we do plans, we don't have that. Environmental impacts are really project specific, but we have to do the review anyway. And so that'll be incorporated as part of the overall pros plan and the element update.
Gotcha. Wow. You guys have your work cut out for you for sure. Yeah. Do you have any indication of when this new pros plan will be formally adopted?
Yeah. So like I said, this project's going to be throughout 2025. And we're anticipating several meetings throughout, the Planning Commission's docket. And that includes, probably about 5 or 6 different meetings. We're hoping to have a public hearing on the draft plans and the element and the capital facilities plan sometime by mid-October. And then at that point, the Planning Commission will make recommendations to the City Council. And that's where they hand the documents off for their consideration. And that'll happen, like I said, about mid-October, late October. Mm-hmm. And then the council will have a couple of meetings to review and provide feedback. And then we're hoping, fingers crossed, to have everything adopted by the end of 2025. One exception will be the parks impact fee. And the parks impact fee is what's assessed to developers when there's new development. So if, say, a new home development, say if 5 to 10 different homes in a neighborhood are constructed, that parks impact fee is assessed to the development for individual units. And so that parks impact fee, we're looking at adopting that sometime in the beginning of 2026, but it'll definitely be before our RCO deadline, which I mentioned at the very beginning of our conversation. The Recreation Conservation Office has a deadline to have everything finished no later than the end of February of 2026. We're going to have everything wrapped up by then.
Awesome. That's to be eligible for those grants.
That's right.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to make sure to link the survey and the open house info in the show notes so people can find that easily. Is there anything else that you want the community to know about this pros plan before we sign off?
No, I mean, hopefully what I've provided here gives you a really good, general overview of what we're, anticipating to work through. I really encourage everybody's participation. Like I said, we've got a lot of opportunities for folks to provide feedback either through surveys. You can attend our meetings or listen in online. It's not required that you come to City Hall to any meeting. We always have opportunities that you can listen to or participate that way. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, anybody's welcome to reach out to me or Debbie Bent in the Community Development Department, and we're happy to speak to anybody about this project or many other projects that we've got going on in our department.
Awesome. Todd, you are a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate you and all the hard work you're doing for Kenmore. Thank you so much for carving out time today.
Yeah, absolutely. A pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Let's Talk Kenmore. Be sure to check back for more interesting topics and conversations. And as always, don't forget to ask yourself, where's the fun?